All right. I just wanted to make a quick video about evolution. I know I've done a few in the past and they're usually pretty lengthy. I just wanted to just simplify things and to make a short video about it. Now, I've been watching quite a few debates on evolution because I've been watching a lot of Stand for Truth videos. The host there is Donnie, hosts a bunch of debates, and a lot of them have to do with evolution. And I figured, you know what, I'm just going to make a simple video and show how evolution can't be true, but at the same time, evolution is correct about something. You see, I have a family tree here, and it's saying a common ancestor. A lot of times, this will be some kind of single cell organism, and they'll say eventually it evolved, and as we see here, the first things are bacteria and green algae, and then it looks like it says hornworts. Then a branch off from this has to do with all these different kind of plants, and over here mushrooms and yeast. And then we got some sponges and jellyfish, mollusks, insects, crustaceans, millipedes. And then we got marsupials, and branch off from marsupials it says humans, chimpanzees, whales, and cows, all branching from marsupials. And then over here it goes to crocodiles. Looks like it from off of crocodiles it says birds. And then over here it's iguanas, lizards, snakes. And as you can see, it's kind of interesting that it actually puts the snake at the tip, which is kind of interesting. I just noticed it right now. If you just follow this straight through, the very tip would be the snakes. That's interesting. But anyway, that's besides the point. As you can see, it traces all of these back to a common ancestor. Now, this is actually true, but at the same time, it's not true. I'm going to explain. There is a law, and I'm not sure the exact scientific name for this law, but it has to do with the offspring of a creature cannot rise above its ancestry. All right? So what that means is this with DNA. When you come to, let's say, the chromosomes and the DNA, if the parents only have so many chromosomes, the offspring can only have that many chromosomes or less. They can't rise above their ancestors, starting with their parents. So let's say, keeping it simple, the parents, well, let's just say humans, let's just use that, and really simplifying it, they each have 10 chromosomes, right? That means their children will only have 10 or less, right? Every time there's a mutation that actually adds, such as the chromosomes as an example, you end up getting a defect such as Down syndrome. And there's other times where there's copyings that have to do with the DNA as well, and they lead to crippling defects as well. So when there's additions, it always jacks it up. But as long as it stays the same or decreases, it's generally fine. And it makes sense if you look at this as information. If you take a book that's an instruction manual and you add to it, of course that's going to mess up the instructions. But if you just take out a page or two, you're missing the information about those couple of pages, but you still have the truth there. You still have the instructions to build whatever it says that is there, right? So as long as there's nothing added, it's fine. And that's what we actually see with science. What we can actually observe, test, and demonstrate through scientific experiment is that through reproduction, the offspring always have the same amount or less information in the genome, so the chromosomes and the DNA. So if they only have, like I said, with these humans, let's say there's only 10 chromosomes with the mother and father, and there's only, to keep it simple, 1,000 base pairs in the DNA with the mother and father. that children can't rise above that. They're going to only have 10 chromosomes and 1,000 base pairs in the DNA. There's never additions that are beneficial. That's science, right? There's nothing to show us anything added to that. It's imagination, it's speculation, not science. So when we come back to this family tree, the evolutionists are right that there's a common point here that brought forth all of these things. But using science, this singular point where everything comes from was not some simple single-celled organism. It was actually something that had all the information in it to create all of these things. It's actually the exact opposite. You see, because what we see through thermodynamics, entropy, everything falls apart and falls into chaos. That's what we're seeing through reproduction. Things degrade over time. Going back to the example of the humans with the 10 chromosomes and the 1,000 base pairs in the DNA, they may come across a family that has 900 base pairs in the DNA. And when their children mate, the children would have, let's say, 950 base pairs because one parent had 1,000, the other parent had 900. So they would end up meeting in between. And an evolutionist would say, well, see, there's addition because this parent had 900 base pairs and now their child has 950. That's addition. It's like, yeah, there's addition, but it can't go above that parent that has 1,000. That parent has 1,000 and the child actually has less. It dropped. So now the next generation is not going to have 1,000. It's going to have 950. So it's actually a degrading. And then as that goes on, and then there's a lot of children with 950, but then they're mating with people who have only 900 again. Well, then that drops to 925, right? And there's a constant degradation. An example, you can see this with the breeding of dogs. Like with the genetic code, you can actually see that through breeding, there's things that are scrambled, so the information's moved around a bit, and there's chunks of the DNA that you could say is like turned off or just straight up removed. And that's what ends up happening. It ends up degrading, and you can't breed the dogs backwards. You can only breed them one way. So once you get to something like the Chihuahua, you can't breed it back to the original dog or wolf that you ended up breeding the Chihuahua from. It only degrades. So you can isolate a genome, a genetic code that you're looking for and focus on that, but you can't reverse the process. You can only remove the information that you don't want, you don't desire, but you can't add it back later on. That's science. That's what we actually observe. That's what we can actually test and demonstrate. So when we actually trace this back, this would not be something simple, because let's say this creature here only had, let's say, one chromosome and 10 base pairs in its DNA. Using the science that we have, what we observe, nothing's ever added. So how can creatures come about that have 10, 20, 30, 40 chromosomes and then hundreds, thousands, millions, billions of base codes in the DNA? How can they add when there's only scrambling and subtraction? It's doing the opposite of science. So the actual focal point here that branches all this off is a degradation of something that had all the information in there originally. And you add that to the fact that through science that we only see life coming from something living and consciousness coming from something that is conscious, then you realize that this focal point that had all that information was alive and conscious. And I'm just going to end it with that, something for you to think about. that obviously leads you to one conclusion, but I'm going to let you figure that one out on your own. So thanks for watching, and take care.